Are you method at all?
Well, the rhythm method.
That
Anyway,
might that
that's
might be
another,
a whole other podcast.
that's another whole old joke. Anyway, I got
I
very
don't know that that's just podcast, but why not? Like whatever you want to talk about.
no. Let's just say I
You haven't lost your touch. I can tell you that much.
let's just say thank you, Joe. Nor of you, by the way. And that's a glass
Thank you kindly.
of Mazel Tov. I got a glass of.
Mazel tov. Yeah, my guest today, he is an incredibly talented star of stage and screen. He is an Emmy-winning actor as well as a writer and director. He also menaced Lois and Clark as supervillain Lex Luthor. Supersized welcome to John Shea. John, welcome to Comic Book Central.
Joe, really happy to be here with you. Thanks.
Oh, stoked to have you. It's been a while. I've been like I had some guests on from Lois and Clark. I've been wanting to do this for so long. I'm so glad. I think I stole you from work though, if I'm not mistaken. Did I? Are you just on a break or like you're in the middle of a project right now,
Well,
right?
I've always been, I work a lot and I work
Yeah.
about at my own pace at the moment, but I have been traveling and let's just say that the timing now is right. And I'm glad you were patient with me and I'm sorry that I couldn't do it sooner, but here we are.
No, so glad. Is it can we sometimes these things like you can't talk about, sometimes you can talk about. I know you do a lot of stage work still. Is this some stage work that you're doing currently? Is it or we can't talk about it
Oh,
yet?
no, we can talk about anything. Honestly, almost
Okay.
nothing's off the record. Stuff about my private life, maybe. But I'll just say, um, I, uh, I helped run a theater. And so I did a play last fall, and it was a great play about a guy who falls in love with a dog and has to choose between his wife and his dog because the wife doesn't want the dog in the house. It's a romantic comedy by A.R. Gurney. And I did three or four of his plays in New York, and I loved him. And so, anyway, I did that play recently. But when I'm not acting, I write a lot. I've directed a couple films, and so I'm writing and doing research for another film that I want to direct, and another limited series that I'm writing. So things like that make force me to travel to do research, scout locations, but at the same time, I'm locked in my studio here where you're talking to me.
Yeah.
Like 5 or 6 hours every day where I'm just kind of developing and writing and trying to get the muse to talk to me.
Writing with an eye to acting in it as well, or just specifically writing and directing right now?
Well, I do love to act in my own. I've written and directed two films. I co-wrote the first one called Southie that I did with Donnie Wahlberg and Rose
Yeah.
McGowan, Amanda Peet, and Will Arnett, and all these great people. But I did write a part for myself there, and that was great. Jimmy Cummings, who I wrote the script with, Lawrence Tierney, Ann Mira, all these great people. And then I did a film called Gray Lady with Eric Dane and a bunch of people, and I wrote a part for myself there too. And that was fun. So, yes, I try to write little cameos, not starring roles, but cameos for myself so I can work with the other actors on that dimension.
Are you method at all?
Well, the rhythm method.
That
Anyway,
might that
that's
might be a
another,
whole other podcast.
that's another whole old joke. Anyway, I got
I don't
very,
know that that's just podcast, but why not? Like whatever you want to talk about.
no, let's just say I
You haven't lost your touch. I can tell you that much.
let's just say thank you, Joe. Nor of you, by the way. And that's a glass
Thank you kindly.
of Mazel Tov. I got a glass of
Mazel tov.
anyway. I went to drama school and I went to a serious drama school where we studied classical acting style, and that was not the method. It was just they say the sort of more of an English style, and that's kind of outside in acting. Like Laurence Olivier and those great English actors would always say, show me the nose. Let me see what kind of shoes I'm wearing, and then I can build my character. And then
Okay.
after I graduated from that school and I then went to New York and I started working, I ended up at the Actors Studio and I worked with Lee Strasberg and all those people there for a couple of years. And that was about, the method. I mean, that was the thing that James Dean and Marlon Brando and
Yeah.
Al Pacino and De Niro and all those great people uh, did before me. And anyway, I love doing that, and that's more inside work, inside out work.
Right.
So. I do both.
But you can flip back and forth. You weren't method for Lex Luthor though. Like you weren't like Lex off. You
Well,
can still talk to Teri Hatcher without being Lex, right?
let me just say something. I do both, and a lot of actors of my generation do both. We work
Yeah.
both the outside in and the inside out. Now, if you want to
Okay.
start with Lois and Clark, I'll just say this. So, Lois and Clark came into my life first before Mutant X, and it's probably the mid '90s. I was living in LA. I had been, I was always a New York-based actor. I lived in Manhattan for 25 years. But I learned very quickly, and I worked a lot of plays on stage and things like that. But I wanted to learn how to work in front of a camera. But in those days in New York, and I'm talking about the '70s when I first came out of drama school, um, it was brutal because you only had a choice to be on commercials or to do soap operas, and both of which were things I didn't want to do. So I had to go to LA, and I went to LA, and I had a great time. And then one thing led to another in LA. I had an agent out there, and then went back to New York and I shot a lot of films. But then 20 years later, I thought I need to go back to LA and I need to get serious about my work again. I had a manager called Keith Addis and a woman called Eli Selden. And Keith sent me a script one day and he said, John, they're having trouble at Warner Brothers casting Lex Luthor. They're doing a series based on, Superman. And I had been a massive Superman fan, like every other kid in the world, right?
Okay. All
No.
right.
So anyway, I read this script and I had an image immediately of how he should be. And and so I called Keith and I said, "Yeah, I'll go to Warner Brothers when you want me to go." And he said, "What about, tomorrow afternoon?" So I thought about this, and this is what I thought about Keith. Because I had trained as a classical actor and had done a lot of Shakespeare, I thought that Lex Luthor should think like Richard III, that is King Richard III in the famous Shakespearean play about the kind of sociopathic,
Hmm.
King of England. Um, but he should look like, a cross between Cary Grant and Donald Trump. I knew Donald Trump from New York, and he was like an ultimate playboy sort of king.
Whole different, right? A whole different world back then. We got to set the stage,
He was,
right?
like a guy who was always on the tabloids, but you know,
Every tabloid he was on, Oprah he was on, like everything. He was the celebrity of the day. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
well, he was, a
Who
playboy.
knew?
He was a
Right.
playboy.
Who knew?
He was out there wheeling and dealing, and I thought that's, but he looked like Lex Luthor. I didn't want him to,
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like Donald Trump. I wanted the character to have an outward appearance of charm and, playboy stuff, but inside, I wanted him to be Lex Luthor and
Yeah.
Lex Luthor. So, and I'll tell you this, Joe, I had done a film earlier in Paris years ago, and I shot this film in French and English. It was a film called Honeymoon. And they offered me the script, and I read the script, and I was like, "What is this character, man? He's definitely a bad guy. He's twisted, but he's in love with this girl, but he wants to kill her. I'm like, what is going on with this guy?" So I went to the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, where all the New York City police detectives go. And I went to the head of the abnormal psychology department, and I hired him to psychoanalyze me in character. And so I gave him the script. He read the script, and then I went in over a period of weeks into his office, and we psychoanalyzed that character and me in that character. It
Wow.
taught me the difference, Joe, between a psychopath and a sociopath. And the difference, as I understood it, was that sociopaths don't are sort of like spiders. They weave a web into which their prey falls. They're driven by appetites that they're not even aware of. And so they have no sense of guilt or conscience or anything like that. And I thought that is Lex Luthor. You know, he can be the kind of playboy and he can look like $1 million, but inside he's churning with these appetites that make him, greedy and murderous and all the things that we really love in a villain. And so that's what I did. So I went to the audition and I had to go to Warner Brothers. I went to the president of Warner Brothers
Wow.
in his office, and his name is Leslie Moonves, later president of CBS. And Les,
Hmm.
I just went to his office. I sat there, but I wore an Armani suit. I wore my best suit, a white tie, and
Hmm.
I mean, a white shirt and a tie. And he said, "You have an idea?" And I did a monologue for him, and he's like, "Oh my God, where'd you get that?"
Oh,
And so anyway, he invited
wow.
the team in, and I did it for them. And then I went to ABC the next day, and I did it for the team at ABC and the president of ABC and all these. And anyway, they said, "Yeah, you got the role." So that's how it worked out. But it came out
That's
of the
unreal.
theater work I had done, you know?
Yeah. That's unreal. And is that the sort of inside out you were talking about a little bit? Yeah, that
You know, Armani suits looking really good. Like, remember he wasn't
right, right,
like the normal, right? He looked
right. Got that.
right. So,
Wow.
so anyway, that was fun to do. But
Yeah.
then I could play in the moments of silence when I wasn't around the public. I could show that darker side, and
Yeah.
like Richard III does in the play that
Yeah.
she's in his asides.
You tapped into so much there. I don't even know where to go because it's like that was genius. But it was like I got to go back because I want to set a few building blocks. But you've set the foundation for the Lois and Clark that I want to get to later. So that was perfect. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so I do want to go back just a little bit. Born in New Hampshire, correct?
Yeah. I was
Okay,
born
so
in New
you
Hampshire just because my dad was a teacher at Freiburg Academy after World War II, which is a boarding school in Maine, in Freiburg, Maine, founded by Daniel Webster. My mom went into labor, but there was no clinic, no hospital, no nothing in those days. So the doctor had told my mom, if it happens in the middle of the night, he told my dad, you got to go to across the border up into New Hampshire to a ski resort in North Conway, New Hampshire
what?
called Mount Cranmore, and at the bottom of the snowmobile, you're going to find a clinic for the guys with broken legs. So they kicked these guys out of the little one-room hospital, and I was born. Yeah,
That's how.
yeah.
Man, like everything is a story. There's like every aspect is a story. Have you haven't written a book, right? You haven't about yourself, your
No,
life.
no, no. But
Is
I'd
that
like
you got one in you though, right?
I do, brother, and I'm thinking,
Okay.
yeah. So one day I will.
Okay, so all the Lois and Clark fans, all the Superman fans, where you that audience is locked in on it, and then we'll get everybody else and all the my goodness, born at a ski resort. That's insane. Okay, you mentioned we've talked about like literature, poetry, classical music. Those were early influences. You mentioned Superman, so I'm guessing comic books did get to sneak in somewhere. Was it just Superman, or were you like a comic book kid? Like, did you groove on comic book stuff?
Well, and then I had a kid brother, Larry, he was 2 years younger than I. And so
Yeah,
we would walk, we lived in the country outside of Springfield, Massachusetts, which is where I grew up. So I
yeah,
went to grammar school there, junior high school there. That's my hometown, my mother and father's hometown, my grandparents, my great grandparents, Springfield, Mass. I love Springfield. So I only lived in New Hampshire for 4 days, and then in Maine for
okay,
1 year, and then we moved to Springfield. Anyway, all I can say is that my brother and I were like every other little kid. We loved the superheroes. And when Superman was on television in the days when it was George Reeves,
yeah,
I mean, it was the classic one, and we were completely, in
okay.
about that world.
I don't know how you did it. So somehow through Lex Luthor, maybe, but yeah, I think you got all my notes because you're walking into each question as I'm ready to ask. So this is unbelievable. I You mentioned the George Reeves TV show, The House of Luthor. Again, I'm going to tap into some episodes of Lois and Clark as we go. I know we're jumping back decades, so what you remember, you remember. What you don't, you don't. The House of Luthor also features Phyllis Coates as Lois's mom. If I did the math right, you mentioned The Adventures of Superman. I think you were 3 when she was Lois Lane. Did I mean, do you recall any hype surrounding that episode when Phyllis Coates was there? Did you, I mean,
Well, I've met her and I worked with her. I mean, I went on the set. I don't remember
yeah,
particular scenes with her, but I wanted to meet her, of course, because I was a fan.
yeah,
No, yeah, and she was
yeah,
fantastic. Loved her. And
yeah,
so, when you grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts, let me just tell you, it's Western Mass. It's a beautiful city on the river, and but dude, there's no theater there in those days. There was one movie theater. I mean, I think my first movie I ever saw was Bambi. Um, but we never met actors. We never met movie stars or TV stars. So
yeah.
it was a thrill for me to go. to move to LA at a certain point in my life and start meeting and
Yeah.
working with these people that I had admired my whole life.
Did you get to say I watched you as Lois?
Of
Like
course.
did you fan? Okay, and even like I always tell my guests, if even if you didn't, just lie to us because we just
Oh, I
want
did.
to.
I loved her. She was great. And everybody else that came on, Sonny and
Yeah.
like Sonny. Do you remember this? That
Oh
Sonny came on?
yeah.
He's the mayor of
Yes.
the populace.
Yes. So
All
many guests. I mean, I think Drew Carey and oh, the actress that played Mimi was they were on one time. I think oh, I'm trying to think who else was on. Were the Jeffersons on?
Look, I think everybody
Uh,
was on it. Some of the
yeah,
episodes.
because you were only on the first, I know, and then sporadic throughout, but they had like so many different guest stars on. I mean, Howie Mandel, it was insane. Oh, we'll get it. Okay, so Shakespeare, you tapped into that. I'm going to do a deep cut here, and I hope you have a few stories out of it. Man from Atlantis
Mm,
with Patrick Duffy.
mm.
Ringing a bell at all? I know it was only one
I
episode.
can tell you everything about that. I don't want to bore you, but I love Patrick Duffy.
Oh my
Um,
God. No, no, no. Patrick was on the show. We talked all about Man from Atlantis. So you were in the sweet spot to talk about Man from Atlantis.
all right, so let's just say that this is
The
how I.
episode is called The Naked Montague, by the way.
That's right. So let me just say, so I told you I'd done Shakespeare, right? So one of the plays I did
Mhm.
was Romeo and Juliet, and I did it on Broadway at
Yes.
Circle T Square. And I was doing Long Day's Journey into Night in Chicago. My agent calls me and says, they're asking you if you'll do Romeo and Juliet back in New York when you finish the run. And so I said, what role? I want to play Romeo. And they said, no, they've already got a guy playing Romeo, a guy named Paul Rudd, not the Paul Rudd we had known, another Paul Rudd. They wanted.
Although he could have been, he could be 80 years old or so.
So
He's ageless.
they said, we want you to play Paris. They want you to play Paris, who is Juliet's girlfriend. This guy, I mean, this is Juliet's boyfriend, and
Right.
her parents want, me, not Romeo, to marry her. Anyway, so there's this scenes, but I don't, but I say I'll play Paris under one condition, that I understudy Romeo and that I get to go on. And they said, well, there's the good news, because Paul Rudd is going to do a movie for the last couple of weeks of the run. And so you're going to take over as Romeo. So I
Nice.
worked like crazy on Romeo. And, I was born to play Romeo, I felt like, right? And the more I learned it, and I rehearsed it in this beautiful theater at the Circle of the Square on Broadway. And then Paul Rudd's job fell through. And I wanted to kill him, you know. So I was like, all this work. So I went to Ted Mann, who ran the theater, and I said, Ted, I've been working for 3 months on this role. My whole life has prepared me. I'm a born lover, and I just got to do this. And so anyway, I did Romeo for one performance, and it was
Yeah.
awesome. So
Yeah.
then I go to LA that summer, and I get out there, and and I do, Barnaby Jones and Eight is Enough, and I'm a guest star. I'm learning how to work for the first time in front of a camera
Right.
ever. First thing I ever did was Warner Brothers, Eight is Enough. Then I get a call. There's a show called uh, Man from Atlantis, and there's an episode that's set in Verona, Italy in the 1600s. They heard that you were in LA and you had just done
Wow.
Romeo and Juliet on Broadway. Do you want to play Romeo
Wow.
in this television series and be a
Wow.
guest star with Patrick Duffy? And so I
Yeah.
thought, definitely. And so, anyway, I go to meet Patrick and on the set, and we're playing the scenes as best we can. But look, here's the funny thing about Hollywood. The scene, instead of being like classic Shakespeare, we're having the sword fight out there,
Right.
and suddenly a guy comes bursting out of a well in downtown Verona in 1600. We're wearing doublet and hose, and he
Right.
comes out in a wetsuit, and it's Patrick Duffy, and he's soaking wet. Like, what are you doing here? And he said, well, where am I? I said, well, you're in Verona, Italy.
Right.
I said, you can't walk around dressed like that. So we dress him up like in the period costume.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he integrates himself into the story. And instead of Romeo killing himself and Juliet killing themselves in the cave at the end,
Right.
Ben from Atlantis goes to his submarine and says, don't drink that poison. That's poison. And so anyway, he saves the thing, and then there's a happy ending at the end.
Yeah,
And
because it's
you
oh, go
know,
ahead.
No, so I learned the difference between New York theater
Yeah.
and Hollywood, you know.
Sci-fi crazy us crazy sci-fi fans, yes, because it had to, for people that don't realize, like I think it was, I can't remember which season, but it was like they changed the theme of the show, and he would swim in this like little well and pop up. I don't know, he'd travel through time and space, whatever, and he'd end up, and they, I guess, had scripts from other TV shows that they would do, and it wasn't necessarily a Man from Atlantis script, and they would just do it there, but it just had Patrick Duffy in his little shorts.
He's a fantastic guy. And we had so
The
much.
great Lisa Eilbacher was in that too. Okay, I'm gonna get to Lois Clark, but if I spun this laptop around in the camera, you'd see all Indiana Jones on the left hand side of me over here. It'd be nothing but Indiana Jones. I've got to ask you: you auditioned for the role of Indiana Jones with Karen Allen? Yes, no?
So I'll tell you that story. So did a lot of theater in New York, like I said, and I worked at the Public Theater for Joe Papp, and I was starring in a play called The Sorrows of Stephen, playing this guy in this romantic comedy, Stephen Hurt. And one day there's a knock at my dressing room door, and I go, just a second, I'm getting changed after the play. And it's a hit, and everybody's coming in New York. And anyway, I open the door, and there's this guy standing there, and he goes, "Hi, I'm Steven Spielberg. I just saw your performance, and will you do me a favor? Will you come out to LA on Friday? I'm doing a new film, and I want you to come out and audition for it." And I say, "Well, Stephen, I'm a fan of yours, man. I'm happy to meet you." And sure, let
All
me
right,
see.
you got Jaws on the resume already at this point. You've got Close Encounters on the resume. Like, yeah, this is a big thing.
So it's Steven, and
Yeah.
he's obviously I'm a fan, and he's great. And so I go to Joe Papp, who's the producer, the legendary producer of New York Shakespeare Festival. And I say, Joe, I tell him about Steven. He goes, "Oh my God." He says, "You're the star of this thing. It's sold out. What am I going to do?" And I said, "Well, my understudy can go on. It's like two performances. I'll fly to LA. I'll do the audition. I'll come right back." So Joe says, "Okay." So
You're the Paul Rudd in this story now.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let the understudy know.
My understudy goes on, and he's great, by the way. So anyway, so the next day or a couple days later, this limo shows up in front of my little like loft on Green Street in Soho, and I'm making 5 cents a week. I've never done like big movies or anything. I have made a couple of movies at that point, but anyway, I jump in the limo, and the limo driver says we're going to make a stop, and this beautiful girl gets in the car, and I go hi, and she's like kisses some guy at her door, and so I see she's got a boyfriend. So I go, "Hi, what's your name?" She goes, "I'm Karen." I go, "Hi, Karen. You on your way out where you going with me?" She said, "Oh, I'm going with you." So we
Wow.
fly to LA, and all the way in LA, she doesn't. We work on the scenes that we're supposed to do. She's going to be auditioning for the girl, and I'm auditioning for Indiana Jones. And so we get to LA. There's another car at the LAX, takes us up to the Black Tower up at Universal Pictures. The next day, another car takes us down the bottom to Lankershim Boulevard to a building that just says the Egg Factory on it. And we go in,
Hmm.
and there is George Lucas. Because that's his place, right? And Steven, who says, "Welcome, I want you to meet the other guys." And I walk into this dressing room, and there's two other guys who are auditioning. We're the first guys in the world ever to audition. And it's Harrison Ford and Tom Selleck and yours truly.
Man,
And so we all have Indiana Jones
man.
hats. They've taken our sizes, and we then shoot for the next couple of days with
Wow.
dolly shots and lighting and makeup, and but everybody's working with Karen. And it comes to be that Karen's already been cast.
Hmm.
So it's the guys who are battling it out.
Wow.
Guys are bigger than I am, and they're 5 years older than I am, and they're awesome. And so, do you know the story, Joe? Right? That the story is that Tom gets the job. He gets the
Tom
offer,
landed it, but
but he couldn't
CBS was
do it.
like, no.
Right? No, they had already said no. We're not going to pick up whatever that
Right.
series. You know,
Magnum PI.
Why? So he
And
thought
they
he was free
did.
to do it. And then they heard and then they asked themselves, what does Stephen and George know about Tom Selleck that we don't know? And so they said, no, we're picking it up, and they rewrote it, and they made it.
Yeah. It was the Remington Still Bond thing too. The same with Pierce Brosnan.
But then anyway, I went to Harrison, who had already done Star Wars, and so
Yeah.
and then he was awesome, obviously.
Because I think Steven wanted Harrison, but George was like, I don't want. I think the story, because I've read, there's like a million making of books, but it was like he didn't want to be that to be like his De Niro and
That's
and
right.
Scorsese. Like I'm just gonna use the same guy all the time. And then I can't, man, you almost got to be the guy on my poster. That's to,
It wasn't meant to
did
be, but
you
I
did you
mean,
do a scene? Did you rehearse the scene in front of Spielberg with Karen Allen? Like, did you go through that whole the bar?
no,
I think it was the
we
bar
made
scene.
the scenes. I mean, like 10, I don't know, 5 scenes, 6 scenes, a bunch
Yeah.
of them,
Oh wow.
all of us. And then I would go back to the dressing room, and then Harrison would go out, and then Tom would go out, and then all of it,
Wow.
So we just
That's crazy.
settled in it. It was fun. I later got to know Stephen, and we became friends. And his wife and I starred in a film together called Windy City. Kate Capshaw.
Okay.
He's a fantastic guy, and obviously one of the
Wow.
best of all time.
That's a great story. That's a great story. Okay, the one part, the part you did get, the iconic part, Lois and Clark. It's on Blu-ray now, right? It's on Blu-ray. Do
Yeah,
you do you watch? Can you watch yourself? Like, do you? I don't know if they send you stuff, but like, do you? Even at the back in the day, like when it was on, did you watch it at all, or
I
do you
did.
watch your performances?
I did watch it, but I was on the set. The thing is that because I'm also a director, and I went to school as a director, I actually got a kind of a double master's. Anyway, so all I can say is that I was always on the set. And because I was always on the set, I was watching the replays that they were doing on the set. And so I feel like
Okay,
I'm seeing the episodes. So honestly, I was commuting, by the way, every week from New York City to LA. I would fly on Sunday night, on Sunday. I would get into LA on Sunday night. I would shoot at Warner Brothers Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, all the Lex Luthor scenes and the Lex Luthor soundstage at Warner Brothers. And by the way, at Warner Brothers at the time, across the street, there was Friends. And so we were hanging out with all the guys from Friends and the girls from Friends. And then
that's right.
there was George Clooney and all the guys from that hospital show that he was doing. Uh,
ER.
yeah. And so we would all go to the cafeteria
That's
there and
right.
play basketball out on the street outside the sound stages, and shoot hoops. It was so much fun. And Dean Cain, who was such a great athlete, played with us, and it was like it was like a college campus, Warner Brothers.
How was your game? Did you have good? Did you have
I
mad basketball skills?
I had played basketball in junior high school and high school, so I wasn't bad. I was okay.
Okay, George Clooney, Dean Cain, and yourself. Who's winning in hoops?
Oh, Dean Cain, remember this? He was a fullback,
He was. That doesn't mean basketball though. That's a whole different skill
Oh,
set, isn't it?
but you didn't want to get under the boards with him because
He's Superman. I get it.
boom, and
Always check you out. Yeah. Okay.
he was so ripped and strong and awesome.
So the way I heard that is that Dean Cain would throw cheap shots in and foul unnecessarily. Is that what I heard? I'm not sure if I heard that correctly or not.
No, that's tragic. No, no, he's great.
Um, okay. I mean, I have a note here too. Did you work with Christopher Reeve at one point?
We had the same agents. We became friends, and so we never
Okay.
worked together, but we did political work together, and we
Okay.
raised money for charities together. And he was a buddy of mine, and I'm very sorry, obviously, with everything that happened with him. But
Yeah. But had you, I guess there wasn't a whole lot of Lex. I mean, you obviously had the comic books you tapped into. You talked about getting into the psychology of it. Had you seen like, I mean, obviously you'd seen Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. I'm guessing, from the movie and things like that. What's that?
I was a big fan of Gene Hackman.
Okay.
Performance. I just knew mine was going to be different. I mean, Gene's was more comedic, and
Yes.
but he was great and obviously a great actor. But ours was so different. You know what made ours different, Joe? And this was Deborah Joy Levine. That was her conception. She wrote it, and she's
Yeah.
the one who conceived of it and pitched it to Warner Brothers as a romantic comedy, a triangle between two opposites, both Superman and Lex Luthor vying for Lois Lane's charms, and and Lex Luthor is like a billionaire sitting at the top of the world. He's an oligarch, and he's bored out of his mind. The world is his plaything. This, like nobody is smart, nobody is rich, nobody is powerful. And then Superman flies and lands on his balcony one day, and he says, "All right, let's go. Let the games begin." Because, this you want a challenge. And so
Yeah.
that was what they did with our series. It just made it different.
I so wish you could see this list of questions I have because you're hitting every one of them as I walk. I mean, literally, specifically to them. That Lex Superman dynamic was established early on. And I wrote the scene down specifically where you say everyone in Metropolis has to look up to see me.
Right.
That's why he's there. And it was like that's how you saw, obviously they do the flippy flop at the end where he's if you ever need to see me, you look up. Yeah, right. But you saw that all the way at the beginning, right? Like you knew that was the Lex that you wanted to tap into.
Uh, yeah, again, we shot the pilot. I hadn't read any of the other episodes. I didn't know where it was all going to go.
Yeah.
But I just intuited from the pilot. It was so well written.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had no problem going in there and meeting with Leslie Moonves and doing it because it was like doing a monologue, on stage. I just happened to be in his office, but years of theater work and years of study. I went to Bates College, I went to Yale Drama School, and after all of that study, and then I did plays on Broadway and off Broadway. So then, when I finally got to Hollywood, I was ready for that stuff because the work that I had done prepared me.
Yeah, you could almost tap into anything at that point. You're going to find some nugget in there somewhere. Okay, so Harrison got Indiana Jones. We get that. Um, he stared down a cobra in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but you did get to stare.
That's what I
You did
did.
get that one in as Lex Luthor did. What? Can you describe shooting that scene? And there's like, what is it? Your butler. It's kind of like a Cato, Inspector Clouseau thing where he sets you up. Like you remember the old Pink Panther movies where like Cato would always like try to
Oh, of
kill him.
course, of course. Well, the
Yeah,
thing, again, Deborah Joy Levine and her team of writers and the Warner Brothers team, and they, came up with these great ideas for that whole first season. And one of them was that Lex Luthor always needed to be on his game. And so he would have his manservant, Wasabi,
yeah.
um, uh, surprise him with kung fu but in this particular one I'm having a brandy in front of the fire one day and I hear this sparkle and a hiss behind me and I turn around and there's a cobra and fangs and it was a real excuse me but it was the real thing. You can bleep that out there. But I turned around and there it was. I said, don't show me this thing. I mean, save it for the close-up.
Oh, was it? There was one
Oh,
there.
oh, it was real. Oh no, it was right behind
Oh,
me.
I thought maybe like you're like in another studio and they're
Oh,
shooting close-ups on this daily job.
oh, no, no, no. No, it's in the
Oh,
same room with me and in
oh
front of
my.
her. It's just me alone. And so I turn around and
Oh,
then I have to stare this thing down, right? It was
yeah.
it was fun. I mean, I don't
Because
think,
you stare the cobra down. That's what Lex does. Like he,
yeah, but I had to
yeah.
look this little bugger in the eye.
How legit scared were you shooting that?
Well, let's put it this way. You'll see the reaction in my face when I turn around. And it's like, uh, and then I realize what it is and who it is and what's happening in the crazy moment. But that
Oh,
I rise to the occasion. I have another funny story, Joe, that I've never told, but I will tell you. So Lex Luthor, had an office and I had the soundstage that was devoted to part of that office in my apartment, stuff like that. So one day I'm on the phone with the mayor, who is played by um, I said his name, Sonny and Cher. It's Sonny.
Sonny
He's off
Bono, right?
camera. So it's a close up on me. The camera is going to dolly in. It's the end of an episode before a break. And I'm talking to the mayor of Metropolis and I'm saying, listen, you do what I say or it's cards. And I slam down the phone like this, right? And then, but I'm smoking a cigar because I always had a cigar. Do you remember this? These long cigars. And so,
Yes.
but it was a dolly shot coming closer and closer and closer to me, and then it was going to end up in an extreme close-up. And the guys kept having a problem with the dolly, problem with focus, a problem with this, a problem with that. I hear the line producer say to the director, "One more take. We're pulling the plug. You got to live with it." And he goes, "Oh my God, it's not quite right. Give me one more take." So it's lunchtime. It's going to be a meal penalty. It's going to cost thousands of dollars. And so I realized we got to do this. I go, everybody, let's go. We can do this, right? And so take, 12. And then it gets closer and closer, and I'm on the phone with him, and it's like, all right, Mr. Mayor, you do this, or I'm going to burn you. And when I slammed on the phone, I slammed on the phone, and I feel the camera coming in. I see it, right? But the ash after 12 takes on my cigar is now like an inch long, and it goes flying in the air and comes down, and the burning butt of the cigar lands on the back of my hand. And I've got my hand here as the camera's coming in, and I can smell my flesh burning coming up into my nostrils. And I know I can't cut the take because
Can't take it. That's it.
and so I just stay there and look at the camera as my flesh is burning and this thing is sizzling below the frame. And they go, cut, print. The director goes, that's Lex Luthor. That's, you got him. You've got him. It's perfect, man. Little did he know. And I was like, wow.
You
And
just took method acting to a whole other level. That nobody can teach that. Nobody can teach put a cigar out on your hand for that.
okay, so
That's
that's the reality.
crazy.
That
Oh
stuff
my goodness.
all the time.
Okay. The I every Lex actor, hair, no hair. I mean, I gotta ask, you obviously have hair in the TV series, and I know your explanation was always like, well, Lex, he's a billionaire, like he'd figure it out, right? Like he'd know how to have hair.
Yeah, it wasn't that. Honestly, it was the romantic
I was
idea.
curious, was it if it was the writer saying that, or was it the actor saying, I don't want to shave my head every.
No, 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 no. It was Deborah Joy Levine and Warner Brothers. It was Leslie Moonves. It was the whole team.
Okay,
This guy is going to be different. He's going to have a full head of hair. But it
got it.
was my idea because at the end of the first season, for personal reasons, I asked them to let me out of my. It was Bob Iger, who was the head of ABC, and I was having issues, let's say, with my family, and I needed to move from LA. It was after the Rodney King riots and move back to New York. And so,
Okay,
so you guys got to let me out of my contract. I cannot do 22 episodes a year. Okay. I was raising this young boy, my son Jake, he was in kindergarten there, but we had to move back to New York to Soho. Right. So they let me out of my contract under one condition. And they say, but you got to come back and you got to do the sweeps episodes, like 4, 5, 6 episodes a year. And I say, okay, it's a deal. So anyway, that's how I looked in the first season, or you see that.
great hair,
Okay.
great hair. If you're watching the YouTube version, great head of hair on John for this.
It's right. And then, but I said the second version, the second season, Bob Iger and Leslie, what if I come back and I'm gone to hell? I've faked my own suicide and I come back and I go savage. I'm living in the sewers. I'm down with the rats. I'm down with the bad guys. I'm more like the Gene Hackman character, underground. And I shaved my head and like that.
Again, if you're watching the YouTube channel, I was wondering, bald cap or did you go full, did you shave?
No. So that was 6 hours of makeup every day done
That's the bald cap.
by the Westmore family,
Yeah.
legendary Westmores,
Okay.
who, were the geniuses at Warner Brothers and had been for generations. And so
Yeah.
I did that. And that's all, yes, that's all because they did flashbacks with me looking like this, so I couldn't ever
Yeah.
shave. But I
What was
did undergo the whole makeup thing.
it was such a cool transfer. It could because you're coming up, but I think that opened the door. You leaving opened the door for them to bring in other supervillains throughout the thing. So it wasn't always Lex Luthor. And then when he did come back, it was so impactful and so different and so memorable. And for some of the younger listeners of your sweeps was like 4 times a year where you had to get the ratings up and you did these stunts or two-parters or crossovers or whatever, and certainly bringing Lex back. I got to ask you about it in the time we have. A couple, the House of Luthor. You got to wear Superman's suit. Did Dean give you any flying tips going into that? I think it was a dream sequence.
Yeah,
You had the suit on.
I mean, he was smart. He took the day off. So, but what?
Was that his costume you wore?
No, no, no. I had my own. They made a costume for me. Whatever they got
Okay.
sizes and all that, whatever it was.
Okay.
I'm taller than Dean, so all I can say is that they. But what I had to do, and I did work for a week before we shot the scene. It's me flying. I have a virtual headset on, and it's me. You discover that's it, but you.
That's the VR. That's right.
And so it was on Dean's on the Superman soundstage where he did all of his flying screen. So it was a massive soundstage like this,
Oh,
with a green screen that was like 100 to 300 feet long, 200 feet long. And so they put me on a trapeze, and I had to learn how to balance on this trapeze so they could then swing me back and forth, and all this. And it was an amazing uh, learning experience, and it made me really appreciate what Dean did with his athleticism. For
yeah.
those 4 years that he did it, I only did it that one episode, but it was a thrill.
And like the Superman actors always talked about like back injuries or thing like being up in the wires. Did you any issues with that, or was it pretty streamlined by then? Like,
Luckily, I'd always been an athlete myself, and I was going to the gym,
okay,
like 3 or 4 days a week, and I was still whatever playing baseball and things like that.
Pretty Face Dragonetti. Do you remember playing Pretty Face Dragonetti in the black and white sequence?
Oh, oh God, that was fun. Oh my God.
Okay, because some of these you get to go out of the comfort zone, and was curious about those.
And that was with Teri Hatcher, and she's like a torch singer, right?
Torch Singer, yeah, back black and white back in the 30s, I think, 40s, yeah.
We haven't talked about Teri Hatcher. So it was
I,
so easy
yes,
to be in love with Teri Hatcher. Oh my God, I loved her. I mean, just as a person, as a funny person, as an actress, she was so great. She is still so great. I just haven't seen her in years. But all I can say is that we did the first reading. We all met together. We all cast separately. We show up at Warner Brothers for the first reading. But I had met her because, again, she and I had the same manager. And our managers had tried to get us together to work together at some point. Keith Addis, again, that same guy, and anyway, that team.
yeah,
So uh, I walked in and I already knew her, and I didn't know she was cast. And so I was like, Teri. And so anyway, she was a dream to work with, and so smart and so funny and so sweet.
yeah.
Great.
She was just on a podcast with David Spade and Dana Carvey. I just listened to it, and it's just one story after another. I mean, she's just nailing it. I guess she's doing stand up, or she was did some stand up recently or something. Just did a 12-minute set somewhere. I'm like, is there anything she can't do?
And no, and there she was as a torch singer, completely
Yes.
believable. She's got a great voice. She could dance. She's, like she was perfect person.
One of the seasons you came back, speaking of Terry Hatcher, there's a scene you mentioned the Cobra was there. Okay, that's legit. Where you're dumping her, or she goes in and there's like a pit of rats. Do you recall? Were there real rats there? Or they by then they're like, you know what? Shea had the problem with the Cobra. Let's not let's not put Terry through it. Or were they legit there?
Trying to remember about the rats. Look, I think
Okay.
everything was kind of real. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, look, here's one of Dean and I. You can't see this, but that's us together in that second and third seasons. But we would try to make it, first of all, when you're doing something week after week, you want to be surprised. And so I don't even want to know that there's going to be rats there, but I don't want to see the rats until the cameras roll, and then I want to deal with them like we would deal with them in real life. And so oftentimes it was that where
Yeah.
I would just I would want to be in the moment with it and not get too comfortable with
Yeah.
what's going to come next, because then you want that real surprise like you'd have in life, right?
You don't get that real reaction when Lex turns around. Yeah, that's the legitimacy. That's the reality. That's the verisimilitude. I think Richard Donner always called it. Um, Streaming, Blu-ray now. We had the DVDs, but it's reaching a whole new generation. How do you see, looking back now that the show is reaching a whole new generation? How do you see your Lex Luthor fitting in with the legacy of the character? Or do you even do you think about it in terms like
I
that?
do. I do. I'm going to continue. You can't see that either, but there's Terry and
I,
and
for
that's
those who are watching YouTube, it's like you've got the greatest pictures of you in the cast of all time, and you're staying next to Terry Hatcher and
it's
Dean
that
Cain.
lot at Warner Brothers where Jimmy
Yes.
Cagney, one of my heroes, who I knew had done his stuff. So there was the
Oh,
legacy that we as young actors were carrying on, the legacy that Jimmy Cagney and all those great actors, Humphrey Bogart, done. So
yeah.
and now the next generation is now seeing our work, and hopefully they're inspired by that. let me just say that having seen George Reeves and the other Supermans, there was, I think mine was, I think, yeah, Chris Reeve came before our Superman,
Hmm.
and then our Superman, I think, was the third one, maybe the fourth, and ours was so different. But so that's the idea, is to make it real and to make it different, to try to tell the truth of these characters as you, Shakespeare says, we hold a mirror up to life, and try to tell the truth like that. I just saw the most recent Superman, and that Lex Luthor, and he's bald. He's gone back to the origins,
Yeah.
and I thought that was fantastic. I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
And I thought that both actors were great. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We're in a continuum, and I got to know Stan Lee. I got to say, I'm so happy for the guys from the Mutant X world
Oh, Mutant X.
and the guys who invented, Superman. What were the comic book?
Yeah.
What was his name?
Siegel and Schuster.
Oh, Siegel and Schuster. Right. I mean, these guys were geniuses, but they had. I'd like to know. You probably know more about their life and how they grew up and what inspired them to create
Yeah.
superheroes.
Yeah, there's a great book. I'll send you a link to it. There's a great book about their life too. You mentioned Jimmy Cagney. Did you Top of the World mod? Was that yours or was that in the script when you took a leap off the
I
building?
did it. I did it for Jimmy. I suggested it. Here's the great thing about
Nice.
that
Nice.
team.
On the lot on the lot where he did it, right?
On the lot where he did it. No, and it was
Sweet.
right there. I went to the steps, but I got to know Jimmy Cagney. I waited on tables for him,
Oh,
and I ended up buying a hotel, and I named one of the cottages after Jimmy Cagney. It's called the Cagney Cottage. And so anyway, I asked him, how, I said, Jimmy, how did you shoot, Top of the World, man? He said, hey, listen, kid, here's all you got to know, kid. Listen to this. He said, the one thing I'm afraid of, see, is heights. See, I told the guys at Warner Brothers I could never be more than 10 feet off the stage. See, I said, 10 feet. He said, yeah. I said, but you were on the top of an oil refinery. He said, that top of the oil refinery was only 10 feet. I measured it. So he put the camera down here and they shoot me up there. I go, top of the world, Mom, top of the world. Believe me, I was okay. And then they had a
oh,
and then they built a model and they blew that up. He said, kid, listen to me. All you got to know, I was, like 20 years old. He said, all you got to know is magic. That's all you got to know. Hollywood, it's magic. So
yeah.
years later, wait, Joe, I'm playing Bobby Kennedy with Martin Sheen playing John Kennedy. And Martin Sheen says to me, we're shooting at the Oval Office, where, down on the Chelsea Piers down in New York City. He says, come with me, John. I got a surprise guest. And a limo pulls up outside and we go out to the door. I go, who? And he goes, open the door. We open the door and there's Jimmy Cagney. Now he's 85. And he
Yeah.
says, help him. I go, what do you mean? He said he can't. So I picked up Jimmy Cagney, and the driver gets out of the limo. We put him in a wheelchair, and we wheel him onto the set. And all these New York guys, the hardened New York union guys, stand and cheer. It's lunchtime, and Jimmy's the
Wow.
guest of honor. After the lunch is over, he's waiting for his car, and I go over to him. I go, Mr. Cagney, do you remember a kid coming up to you one day after breakfast at a hotel, called the Summer House? And he goes, yeah. I said, do you remember he asked you about top of the world, Ma, top of the world? And you said, listen, kid, I did never more than 10 feet off. He goes, yeah. I said, I'm that kid, Mr. Cagney. You said
Oh
that
man.
acting is, but I had my Bobby Kennedy blonde wig on. I had false teeth on. I was talking like Bobby Kennedy. I pulled my wig off. I took off my false teeth and I said, hey, Mr. Cagney, you were right. It is about magic. And you said,
Oh man.
right? And
How
so,
amazing is that? How great is that you got that opportunity?
wow. So anyway, those guys inspired us, and we hope
Yeah.
that we're inspiring, the next guys.
That's why I said some kid's going to come up to you someday and just go that talk to you about Lex Luthor, and it's going to be full circle for. I'm going to close it. You mentioned Mutant X. You played Adam Kane. Numerous episodes of the show were written by comics icon Howard Chaykin. Did you ever get to meet Howard?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Would you? What's that?
Well, it was fantastic. I mean, that was the Stan Lee thing, right? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I told you that, yeah, Howard Chaykin was on the set all the time. But I told you, you can't see this, but this is the comic book that they did for Mutant X, and it
Yes.
says, it's Marvel Comics. It says Stan Lee presents. I'll photograph this and send it to you. But it
Yeah.
was the thrill of my life to actually end up on the cover of a comic book
Of a Marvel comic.
of a Marvel comic
Yeah.
because, of course, I'd been all the Marvel heroes. I'd been a fan of all of theirs.
Was it that aspect of it, of the it being a Marvel comic project and much different than Lex Luthor, that drew you to the project, or was it, had you seen the script? Was it what brought you in? What was like, yep, I'm locked and loaded on this.
First of all, they offered it to me. I didn't have to audition for it. And I said, well, let me read it, right? So they just sent
Okay.
me the script. And
Wow. That
I,
doesn't happen that often.
well, it happened at
In
the
Ho-
Cannes Film Festival. These guys were all sitting on a yacht. And all I can tell you is that I got a call from LA from my agent, my manager, again, this time Eli Seldon, saying, John, that they're offering you this thing. They're going to do 22 episodes, the first season up, and we shot this in Toronto.
Yeah.
Um, the thing about Mutant X, I have to say, the reason why I wanted to do it is that I wasn't going to be the bad guy. I was going to be the hero, but a complicated hero, a guy who
Mhm.
was, you know, a geneticist who had gone to Stanford University, who thought that the genetic sort of modeling that he was doing was going to be helping agriculture, and not knowing that it was being taken by the bad guys to use in the Human Genome Project to alter human beings to create these super warriors. So anyway, it's very much like the government is today. They're
Mhm.
doing secret things and all kinds of stuff, maybe like the coronavirus and things that get out of control. So my character in Mutant X was a hero rather than the villain. Like I had already played the villain. I didn't want to play another villain. So it was fun. But then I got to do all the stunts and to, learn how to do what Dean Cain had been doing and what they did on all the X-Men, right? All those people with these superpowers. And it was so much fun, man.
Why did you leave after season two? What happened there?
It was season three.
Or
I
season three?
well, they only did three seasons. I think maybe there was a fourth, but let's put it this way. There
Or
was
after season two, but I think you came back for, was it guest appearances in the last one, or am I getting that wrong?
let's put it this way. It got complicated between Warner Brothers and Marvels without going into the legal
Okay.
things. And I had signed a contract for a tremendous amount of money, and they didn't want to pay me the money. So I hired the best lawyer in Hollywood,
Got it.
and he sued them or threatened to sue them unless they made a deal. And so they made a deal. It's just complicated stuff. But all I can say,
Yeah.
I said, okay, you don't want to pay me for the 22 episodes, but I'll do 12 of them. And that's what I did for the third season. Okay.
Okay. That makes sense. No, I got that now because I'm like, it was such an amazing thing. And then I think Lois and Clark ended on a cliffhanger. And I think Mutant X ended on a cliffhanger, if I'm not mistaken. So do you think we're ever going to see either story resolved at some point? Would you return for either of them if they do like a let's wrap it up proper?
Of course I would, but it came down to, Marvel and Warner Brothers. And so I
Yeah.
call them. I'm the guy in the middle. I never left intentionally. I would
Yeah.
never leave something hanging. In fact, I was irate. And so when I went back to Toronto and talked to all the comic book guys, and the producers and all these guys are like, you cannot leave our fans hanging. It was playing in 150 countries around the world,
It was huge. Yeah.
everywhere. And I was like, what? Because you guys are having a hissy fit? Let's go. Let's figure this
So
out.
that was the deal, the suits. It was just all about the suits, and
All
and
suits
even though it was
involved.
such a huge success, it could. Do you know, did they have a finale? Like, did they have a conclusion that you've ever seen?
No, I've never seen it. I bet that they wrote it because the writers
That's
were
why I was curious if they had a script.
sincere about it. They were
Yeah.
invested. They were so awesome. It wasn't
Okay.
the writers. It was the rights guys. It was lawyers and money.
I mean, again, fantastic show. I mean, you guys and your castmates were unbelievable in it. What's next? What's around the corner? What should we be looking for? And can we follow you anywhere and find out what you're up to?
Um, what am I doing? So I'm writing a film, a feature film. I don't want to really talk about it, except
Yep.
that it's set in New York in the late 50s when the mob brought heroin out of Harlem, having devastated East Harlem. They brought it into Lower Manhattan, and so I met a guy many years ago. who was called the Junkie Priest. He was a Franciscan friar. If you know anything about the friars, they don't wear collars, and they wear street clothes, and they work on the street trying to help people. So that guy became a friend of mine. His name was Daniel Egan, and there had been a best-selling book written about him. A bunch of great Hollywood directors had tried to make a film about him, and nobody ever did. So he gave the rights to me. He said, "Can you do something, John?" So for 9 years, I worked with him, working on the story. He finally passed away in the year 2000, but I never gave up. And so those
Mm.
I made both Southie and Gray Lady. I'm now ready for that third film, and so I want to tell that story. But it's an amazing story about a hero, and the woman who came into his life to help him do what he did. Yeah,
This is 26 years in the making.
yeah, longer.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's I mean, for people out there that are like struggling to get, keep at it. Just keep at it. Oh man, that's
He
amazing. And
gave me
then
that guy, well, Joe, let me just say, he gave me a postcard once, and it just said two things on it. It said, "Don't quit." And it was framed, and I keep it on my desk. Don't quit. And so that's the secret for anybody who's listening, who's, like has a dream and they want to manifest that dream. Just keep going.
perfection. And Theater Workshop of Nantucket. That's it. You're the artistic director emeritus there, so we can I'm sure you got some projects going on, or we
If
always
you
want to
come
focus
to
on that.
Nantucket, yes, I ran that theater for 6 years, and I was the artistic director, and I produced and directed and acted in lots and lots of things. But because I was making other films, I left that, handed the baton to the guy who's running it now, a guy called Justin Cherney, and now I help supervise things and overlook things, and I do. I've done. Nantucket is the place where Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick. And so I do Moby Dick every year for the last 12 years. I do it in the Whaling Museum.
Oh,
So
oh.
it's really fun. So I do
And social media, you're out there
I
somewhere?
have it's just on Instagram.
Instagram?
It's called the official John Shea. The official John Shea, because there were some fake people like fans who wanted to put their own um
Clones? Are there clones out there?
so anyway, but I have to say, Joe, I'm not very good at the social media stuff, but I'm going to get better. Because I'm getting a team together to help make this film, and they're going to help me get out
I
there.
was wondering if the team, well, yeah, they come in and then when all this is ready to come out, we'll follow you on Instagram. I'll post the link there. John, it has been an honor to revisit these roles with you, to go back and dig into the psyche of Lex Luthor and all these different things. Thank you so much for joining me today on Comic Book Central.
Joe, you're fantastic. Thank you for keeping all this work alive and for your passion for everything. It was an honor to be on your show. I'll be happy to come back anytime. And
Thank you.
thank you.